What's up, everybody? We are here with a very special video segment on the MacGuffinPodcast.com. Our friends at SIFF are holding a very special week-long, is it week-long screening?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, week-long screening called Noir City.
The annual event.
Yes, of course, the Noir City, Film Noir, they're going to be showing a whole bunch of great, movies from the 40s and 50s.
Yeah, and stuff that you can't get on DVD or even VHS, some of it.
So, being that both Brandi and I really enjoy film noir films, we thought we'd talk a little bit about it. I guess a little bit about the history, some of the characteristics of what makes a film noir, and some of our favorite film noirs.
We actually did a top 5 about that before that you
Yes.
could go back and watch if you want to.
But we're going to make it extra special this time. So... I guess we could start by talking a little bit about the origins of film noir.
Yes.
And I guess you can't talk about film noir without talking, I guess, about German expressionism. So I guess, can you talk a little bit about it?
Well, basically, the timeline goes kind of like this. And the people didn't know they were really inventing a genre. It was just this confluence of all of these factors that came together. And later on, in the 70s, film scholars look back and kind of like marked what happened and named it film noir. And first you had filmmakers like Fritz Lang and his contemporaries working in Germany, and other people working across Europe who were making these dark, strange films in German expressionism, very stylized.
I think some notable ones, especially from Fritz Lang, would be M with Peter Lorre.
Amazing film.
And then, of course, the great silent film Metropolis.
Yeah. Some people will even pinpoint M as being the first noir, or at least the first movie that sort of brought together a lot of the noir themes.
Okay, and then another one that comes to mind would be the silent film Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Would you say? I think
the angular sets, the use of light and shadow.
And
the dark themes.
the world that they create is not meant to be realistic. It's supposed to have a tone and a mood, and you could totally see that in films that would come later. Again, like you said, M would probably be the first film noir, but then I guess if you bring it to America, right, and then you...
and this is what happened. Like, all these great filmmakers are working in Europe, and then World War II is about to happen, so they all move to Hollywood, and, Billy Wilder moves to Hollywood, and he makes Double Indemnity.
Yes, my favorite film noir.
And another one that is, like, the first real film noir, some people say, with the whole, like, it begins at the end, and you already know that things are not going to go well, and it's got the narrator, and it's got the femme fatale, and Barbara Stanwyck, and it has every single element that you want, and in something that you're going to call a film noir.
Okay, so I guess let's talk about a little bit of the characteristics of a film noir. First off, obviously, is the visual aspect of it. A lot of film noir films take place at night, within the city. Usually deals with crime, like really characters that are, I guess, film noir really brought about the anti-hero.
Yes.
Would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. But do you have anything else that you think of?
They're coming off of a lot of sort of like caper and crime films that were made during the Depression, but it's a different vibe, A lot of the movies in the 30s were sort of like about escapism. And then we're getting into this more serious era, the world is pretty depressing with the Nazism and everything else going on, and the movies got darker, and there wasn't as much money to make them either with the crunch of the war. So they had to get creative with the way that they were making the movies. It was very atypical for any frame not to be just completely lit in a film, like the key light and the fill light, it was all there, and then all of a sudden it was okay to have darkness in the frame, which was for aesthetic reasons, and also because it's cheaper setup to do, fewer lights, they would have
definitely low budget.
A lot fewer cuts. There's a very, very long takes compared to a lot of the films that were made before, or not in this genre, and in order to make it visually interesting, they experimented with shadows.
Yes. I guess you could say that the shadow, the darkness definitely plays a role just as much as the light. I guess at this point we could talk about a little bit about our favorite film noirs. Obviously, I'm going to go straight from my top 5. For me, again, at the top is Billy Wilder's Double Indemnity. But again, another great one is Orson Welles' Touch of Evil. Just a great film.
Some ones that I don't think I mentioned on my top 5 that are great. Gilda.
Oh yeah,
The
Gilda.
Big Heat, Murder My Sweet, The Prowler, which is one that I actually saw at this festival at Noir City a couple years ago, which I think is finally coming out on DVD. I mean, there's just
it's interesting that the style of noir doesn't just have its own category. I mean, it really did kind of branch off into other categories. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking like horror. Right,
horror.
Like Night of the Hunter. I think Night of the Hunter definitely has a lot of noirish themes to it, with the angles and the sets that obviously don't look real. That totally looks misconstrued. I don't even know if that's the correct word to use. And then another one is Cat People. Cat People, again,
I love Cat People.
Is another film, like you said, where you don't really even see the monster in the film. It totally plays off of the darkness and the shadows and everything like that. I mean,
there's just like if you like now independent cinema, like there's no reason not to go back and explore what was pretty close to being independent cinema back then, because they were working in the studio system, but these were B movies that were not getting the same level of attention from the big executives. Low budgets, actors that are a lot less known, or at least hadn't become super well known yet, a lot of them. I mean, very cynical themes, and they get away with a lot of risque stuff that you won't see in some of the like more blockbuster films.
Right, a lot of the stories don't even have like happy endings. A lot of them have like really bleak, dark endings, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's always a sort of a moral center, because they were working under the Hays production code at the time still. So there's certain stuff they couldn't get away with. You know, you literally could not have a character get away with murder without something happening.
Right.
Which often contributed to having a bleak ending, because your character is supposed to be your hero.
If he
murders someone, by the end of the
guy.
movie he's going to be dead too, because he can't get away with murder under the Hays Code. You know, it's very interesting.
Okay, so so it's kind of interesting to think that, you know, these films that were made cheaply, that were considered B films back in the day, are so highly influential to the films that are made today. So I guess we can talk a little bit about films that were influenced by film noirs, or as some would call neo-noir films.
Yeah, something like Chinatown.
For me, the first thing that comes off the top of my head is LA Confidential.
Yeah.
LA Confidential, I think, is directly inspired by films made back in the day. I mean,
there's a lot of directors that are still like very, very clearly influenced by that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
it's
Brian
some
De
great
Palma
stuff.
kind of people,
Brian De Palma. Speaking of Brian De Palma, now we have to say that even though a lot of films were influenced by film noirs and are great, right? Some of them are really bad too. I mean, have you seen Black Dahlia? No. Black Dahlia is a horrible film, but I mean, it's definitely
in no genre is everything going to be a gem, but when you think about the conventions that they were working with, the fact that this genre even emerged is very fascinating to me.
It's very fascinating.
So they do this festival every year at SIFF, and they always show stuff that is like sort of classics. This year they're showing Stranger on the Third Floor, which is another one that is sometimes identified as being like the first noirs from 1940, I think, so a few years before Double Indemnity. A lot of these film scholars disagree on what the first noir was. They're showing Don't Bother to Knock, which is a great movie starring Marilyn Monroe before she was super famous,
awesome.
And I think those are the two opening night films.
So
anyway, we can put down here where you can see the schedule.
Yeah, and then definitely check it out, because on the podcast we're going to be doing write-ups for all the films that will be shown at Noir City.
As many as we can.
Scratch what I just said. As many as we can. And if you have a chance, if you're in the Seattle area, please go check it out at the SIFF Cinema. And we'll catch you guys at the movies.